So my name is Dorris Musasa. I am from D Healthcare, which is a counseling practice. We help people from all over the world. Basically, we are on online platform. So my background is in mental health nursing. I've worked in the NHS for many years. So today we'll be looking at issues that affect people when they move abroad into like new environments. So a lot of people have recently moved from Africa to the UK, and we have had a lot of people, getting in touch in relation to, stress that they are facing when they get to new environments, new countries. So there's a lot there to look at when people move from one country to another. Because they start with excitement, before they move. They're very excited and they're looking forward to going into a new country. And not many people sit down and think about what's going to happen or have a plan of, like when I get there, what do I need to do or what challenges can I face? So when people get there, a lot of people are getting a culture shock, change of environment. They're getting social isolation. Some people are getting really stressed and very anxious. And some people are getting really confused with their identities. And for some, there's language barriers because, as you know, in England, there's different accents, depending on where you are, the North, Midlands, or South, or the South of England. So, or Scotland, some people are really struggling with understanding the different accents. So the challenges with adapting, especially for those with kids, and some people are uncertain. They're starting to wonder whether they'd made the right decision, to move. Was it the right decision? And some are contemplating going back home. So there are all these issues that people are facing. So today I'll just kind of do a breakdown. There's a lot to talk about. So I'll try and go through what I can in the first 30 minutes or so, and then we can have some questions if people have questions then. So I'll just start with the social isolation. So the thing is, when you move to a new country, it's very difficult if you don't have anyone as you know, in Africa, we have like extended families, we've got aunties, uncles, and neighbors. It's easy to socialize. But when you get to a new country, you're leaving behind your support network of your friends and family. And then you have these feelings of loneliness and isolation, especially if you're having difficulties making new friends. So it's really important that people connect because people are busy working as well. That's the other thing. So there are some platforms like WhatsApp where people can, join these groups and try and connect to people whenever they can, whenever they have time. And it's really important that people make time to do this because people just focus on working sometimes and they think, oh, I have to work. But then if you don't support yourself, you'll probably get sick and you won't be able to work. And I hear people saying, oh, we've got bills to pay. We need to send money back home. Well, if you get sick, you can't send that money back home. And you'll be in a worse situation. So you have to consider your health first. So look after yourself and make that time to connect with people. If there's no one nearby, then go to these WhatsApp groups and try and connect. I believe there are different ones in different areas. So you can connect with, people in your local area. And then there's stress and anxiety. So if you get into a new area, you don't know anyone, it's quite normal to have these feelings of stress and anxiety, because some people are kind of panicking and thinking, oh, this is it, I can't cope. Things are not working for me, and they start thinking in a very negative way because they think that this is not normal. What I can say is it's a normal reaction. You don't expect yourself to move into a new area or a new country and just get on with things. It's kind of a process. So there is a process there. You get into a new place, you get a bit of stress, you get a bit anxious, and that's kind of normal. So you have to accept those feelings of anxiety and stress. Sit with those, because that's the normal process of adapt. If you ignore these feelings, or if you think this is abnormal, then that becomes a problem, because you start challenging yourself and your self-worth, and you get confused because you're not sure whether you should be there or whether you should be doing one thing or another. So when you get stressed, just accept it's happening, it's there. You need to have like a plan as to what you're supposed to be doing. If you already got work, then that's good. Just focus on that and focus on making new friends. If you don't have a job, then focus on, getting your CVs and connecting with people, trying to find out, how best you can get a job. Ask people, for ideas, like interviews, how do I go about the interviews? What questions do they ask? So you need to start reaching out to people to reduce these stress levels and this anxiety. Yeah, talk to people, go to churches, local churches, or if there's churches from whichever country you've come from, try and connect with people and start talking then about, what you're going through. I know people struggle with opening up. But I think, people have to move away from, being so quiet and closed in a shell, not talking to people about how they're feeling. It is really important that people just try to connect with people, because if you tell someone that you're stressed, it doesn't mean, that you're mentally unstable. I think people fear having this label of, being labeled as being mentally unwell. I think we really have to move away from that in this era and start openly talking about it. If you're feeling anxious, stressed, or even depressed, just tell people, oh, I'm feeling a bit depressed. I moved here and this is what I'm going through, without saying too much. And people will be open to listening. But if people are closed and not open to talking to people, then it's a problem, because people don't know what you're going through, and these symptoms often get worse. And then there's other issues to do with identity. So some people will start questioning their identity and sense of belonging. So when you get to a new place, you see different people from different cultures, and sometimes you feel like you're not fitting in. It could be at work, in the working environment. You're probably the only African there, or there are a few Africans there, but, from other countries. And some people are losing their sense of belonging and identity. And you just feel like you don't belong there. Different cultures, different languages I mentioned before. So it's really important that you try and fit in. It's hard and it's a process. So if it's a working environment, it's important just to try and, form some new relationships at work, with people that you work with. The culture will be totally different in some cases, but just try and fit in and be open-minded, because if you go in there and say, oh, this is who I am, and you're not flexible with, who you are, it may be really difficult for you to fit in. So just try and be flexible, be open-minded. I'm not saying that you should be, you know, giving away your values or your identity, but it's just being open-minded to allow people, you know, new people into your life, into your working life, so that you make your life easier. And there's issues with language barrier, which can also lead to feelings of isolation and frustration, because I've heard some people saying, you know, they're struggling to understand some of the accents, for instance, people in Scotland, and that can be really frustrating as well. So what I can say is, in situations like that, it's really hard. You just have to kind of it takes time for you to kind of adapt and learn these new accents. With time, you will get to understand the different accents, and they'll probably understand you as well, because it's two ways. Some of them will be like, oh, you know, we don't understand what you're saying, and you'll be saying, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. So it's really about taking your time to get to understand, you know, these accents, and don't get frustrated. Be open and, you know, say, you know, I don't really understand. I'm new here, and let people know so that you don't get too frustrated. Or some people will be like, oh, I'm giving up, you know, this is not working. And then again, you go back to being self-critical, which is not helpful. That's going to affect your mental health in the long term. So you have to put up all these barriers and plans in place to kind of look after your mental health. And there is homesickness. So a lot of people are missing home. Obviously, it's a big change for most people, whether you're moving within the country or from overseas. It's, you know, it's always hard when you move to a new place. So you miss your friends, family, and your culture, even food, you know, those are important things, important connections. And these, you know, when you're homesick, feelings of sadness and, you know, longing for your family, these are really strong feelings. And a lot of people are getting really depressed because they can't connect with people. They are missing their family. And a lot of people are saying that they've got pressure from the home country, because people would have come, you know, expecting to start earning and supporting other people back home. But for some, you know, it's not what's happening. They've got a lot of bills to pay. Some people are not working straight away. Some people have not got enough work. So all these things are putting pressure on people. And it's really important that people tell people back home, you know, honestly what's going on, that they don't have the money. They're working, you know, they're working hard, or they're looking for work. So some people are just pretending everything is fine. Whatever they get, then they try and send it. And then they get stressed because, you know, they don't have enough money to look after themselves. So people have to learn to be honest. If you can't afford to support people, it's okay to tell them that, you know, I don't have the money. Rather than getting stressed, because if you get stressed or depressed, then you can't even work and send that money back home. Then it comes back to, you know, looking after your emotional well-being, because if you neglect it, you're not going to be able to work. And the main goal is for you to be able to sustain your family, you know. But if you neglect your mental health, you will end up not being able to work at all, and you'll be in a, you know, a worse situation. So always think like that, you know, if you can't look after yourself, who is going to look after all these people that you're working so hard to look after? That's really important. Um, so that those are the challenges that people are facing. And then there are challenges at work as well, like, you know, some healthcare practices, which is really hard because in some situations, people don't have control when they get to work, and there are certain policies in place, or, lack of policies, which leaves them vulnerable and open to manipulation. But these are the things that people need to communicate to their, managers about, or, their unions, if they're a member of a union, to help, manage these challenges. Yeah, so there's a lot there to deal with when you're moving to a new country. The important thing is to, give yourself time for self-care. For those who on the channels, the WhatsApp channels, I've talked a lot about self-care. And that is very important because the jobs that people are doing, they're tiring jobs, they're long hours. You need to have time to take a break, to reflect on your life, to look at what you're doing, because people don't often sit down and think about their life, like what am I doing and what are my goals in life? And they miss that, and they focus on working every day all the time. And then people face challenges and they don't know how to deal with them because they haven't got a plan, like a life plan. Like, why am I here? People need to write these things down. It's really important. You have like a plan for your life. What am I here for? Because I'm finding that people are being challenged, being in a new country, being in new jobs. Is some people have never done these sort of jobs before. Some people have left jobs that they enjoy doing, that they've trained in, and they're doing new roles. So it's really important to know why you're there. Why did you decide to move? Even if it's moving house, why did I move into this area? What was my reason? So if you write these things down, they kind of make sense when you look on paper and think, well, this is why I'm here. So you focus on that. And that gives you strength when you look at it and think, oh, things are hard. Yes, but this is my main goal. This is what I want to achieve. Some people left their families, in back home. So if the aim is to get your family together one day, you have to have a plan, like write it down. I'm struggling, but this is going to pass because my main goal is to have my family around. So always try and make it real, break things down and write things down on paper so you know what you want to achieve. And it makes it easier because you have like a focus. So people often want to know, like with self-care, what do they do? It's easy, just going for a walk is the easiest thing to do. Like, some people during their lunchtime, they can just decide to go for a walk. Instead of sitting in the staff room during your break, get out, go for a walk, get a bit of fresh air. Fresh air is really good for you. Even if it's cold, it's that coldness, helps you to focus when you get back into work. If you're at home with the kids, get the kids out, wrap up warm and go for walks. Walking is cheap, it's free. You know, some people talk about going to the gym. If you have the time, it's a great idea, but walking is free. So try and get out for a walk every day, 30 minutes. A walk is good for you, and there's a lot of benefits in walking. There's been a lot of research on that. It's good for your focusing, for your mental health, for your memory, all these things. So, even if you're doing dom care, when you're waiting to go to your next client, just get out of that car and go for a walk. Because people tend to, when they're on break, they're on their phones on a screen. You're not giving yourself a break. Because the thing is, if you're working long hours, you're probably going to do like a 12-hour shift, or, after that, you get home, you're tired, you sleep, you haven't had time to disconnect. So try and do that. The other thing is, I've talked about meditating on the Bible. Those who are Christians, just, memorize a Bible verse and try and repeat, if you can, memorize it, just repeat it instead of thinking about, what's going wrong in your life. Just focus on the Bible. This you can do even at night when you can't sleep, instead of, counting all your problems, what you can't do. Just, forget about it. Just look and, focus on the Bible. That's something that you can do. Talking to people, like I say, stay connected, keep in touch with friends. If you don't have any friends locally, even back home, you can phone people, do the video calls, WhatsApp videos, and try and reach out to people, even, local people from your countries. Reach out, because people keep saying, oh, people from my country, they're not nice, or they gossip, or people put up barriers for themselves before they even reach out. We have to move away from that, because this is affecting people's mental health. Just, putting a barrier, saying, oh, people, they're not nice people, they gossip, they talk to each other about each other. Let's move away from that. Let's connect and try and help each other, to maintain our well-being. Yeah, I think and there's mindfulness as well, where you do relaxation, like exercising, stretching, body stretching, all those things, deep breathing exercises. You can do this, like it's easy. You don't need to have a lot of time to do deep breathing exercises. These are, techniques that can help you calm your mind, and they reduce anxiety. And, when you're stressed, if you're doing the breathing exercises, then, they help you cope a bit better. Yeah, I'm just conscious of the time. I don't know if people have questions so far. If there are no questions, yeah, I'll just move on. So, I was talking about people getting anxious, depressed, stressed, and I mentioned that it's a normal reaction. But what I can say is, if you are experiencing stress, anxiety, depression, and it's gone on for at least 6 months and you're not settling, then this is no longer a normal reaction, because, you've had 6 months to settle into the new environment. So if you get to that point where you're still struggling, because the thing is, if you leave it for a longer period of time, 6 months, if it goes into a year, then that's more than stress. It goes into depression and, anxiety. The anxiety symptoms will increase. So it's really important for people to distinguish between stress, depression, and so they call it clinical depression, when you are actually depressed to the point of needing help, and when you are anxious to the point of needing help. So it's really important for people to give themselves time, to settle, but at the same time, people need to be conscious about how they are feeling, the feelings of sadness. When these feelings become permanent, you're not enjoying anything at all, you're struggling to get out of bed to go to work, you're kind of dragging yourself. Because I know from our cultural background, people will persevere. They'll still get out of bed, they'll still put a smile on their face, even if they're depressed. And people will not know. So it's really important, when you know that, these feelings are sitting with me all the time and they're getting worse, you're losing appetite, you're not phoning people back home as often as you do, or you're avoiding people. I know people will still go to work, they'll still push themselves because they want the income, which is, important. So what I'll say to people is, if you feel those feelings are getting more intense, you need to seek help. You need to go to your GP and talk to your GP about what's going on, how you're feeling. And when you talk to people, tell them how you're feeling. it's really important to kind of open up and tell people that I'm feeling sad. We have the Shona terms that we use. I always like using those because people, when you say depression, some people don't really understand the weight of this word depression. But when you say in your own languages, the words for sadness, it means more. Because some people come to me and say, "Oh, I'm not depressed, but I think I'm just stressed." And when I break it down and say, how are you feeling? Tell me in Shona or whatever language they speak in, what words do you use? Then you can then see that some people are actually depressed. They've been depressed for a long time. They have these feelings, and some people will be experiencing even suicidal thoughts. But because we use the word depression, some people associate that as a negative term for mental illness. So they don't want to talk about it. But it's really important. You go to your GP, you talk to your GP about how you're feeling. There's a lot of help. There is medication that you can take, antidepressants, medication for anxiety. There is counseling as well out there. But if things are really pressing and you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling suicidal, or you're on your own and you don't have anyone to talk to, there are helplines as well that you can actually call, and they're free for support. For those on my channel, I always put those there so you can call and get some support. Long term, it's really important to get counseling, someone to talk to, because these symptoms, although they're triggered by moving, for some people, they've had issues in the past which they never dealt with. Now that they're under enormous stress, they now facing a lot of challenges. These problems that they faced, even from childhood, they start coming up to the surface and they affect them. But a lot of people don't know. They don't know that. They just think that, this is what's happening to me now, and they will expect things to get better. But if you're now depressed, you're now anxious, I mentioned depression and anxiety because they are the most common ones, but there's a lot of other issues as well. So it's really important that you seek counseling. Some people are saying, it's hard to get counseling from people who do not understand their cultural background. Reach out to, other people from your cultural background. There's a lot of people out there, counselors. The counselors at church as well. Different churches, they'll have, counselors who understand your cultural background. Some people want counseling in their own languages. Reach out and have a look around. Our services are online, so we're reachable from wherever you are. It's really important that, people start talking about what's going on for them now, but more importantly, what went on in the past. People have a lot of trauma. They've gone through a lot in their lives, and some people never had the opportunity to talk about it. So it will be really difficult for people to start coping now with the challenges that they're facing today. Yeah, so I'm just saying this for people to understand that when you're facing these challenges, sometimes on the surface, it looks like they're, challenges of today that you're facing today. But if you dig deeper, these are problems that you've had from before, which you need to deal with, and you need help with that too. So I just encourage people to go to their GPs in the first instance and talk about their mental health and get help. It's okay to take medication if GPs, they know when you need antidepressants, if they suggest that, then go for it, take them because what you need is to be better. Don't worry about what people say. If you tell them you're on antidepressants, you don't have to tell anyone. But it's really important that people get help and there's a lot of stigma around mental health within the African cultures. I think we need to break that barrier and start opening up and start talking about it, because it's really important. So yeah, so that's seeking professional help that I was talking about.
Hi, Doris. So
Hi.
there are two questions in the chat. The first one is on hopelessness, and then the other one, I don't know if you've got access to that, if you can read that.
So hopelessness, let me have a look on the chat. So I can't, so while someone is saying, I can't even talk to anyone, I just find myself crying a lot. I'm regretting coming here. I feel stuck. I thought everything to come. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. So when you're having those feelings of hopelessness, those are really strong feelings, but I think it's really important for people to stop and think about why they decided to move. What was the main thing? When you heard about an opportunity and you decided that I want to move, what were you hoping for? What did you want to achieve? So sit down, whilst you're crying is a good thing. I tell people all the time that crying is not a weakness. So if you're saying you're on your own and you're crying, it's actually a good thing because you're releasing all those emotions. You're not keeping them inside, because if you keep those emotions inside, it's a bad thing. One day you explode, or you'll just find yourself, not coping at all and needing, even going to hospital. But when you're crying, don't think it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. But in the moment, just get a pen and paper, write down what motivated you to move. You sold everything for you to move. What were you hoping for? What was the reason for moving? If it was for better opportunities, can you break down those better opportunities? What was it, the lifestyle? Was it to be able to support your family? Were you running away from trouble from wherever you came from, persecution? What is it that you wanted? What attracted you to move? Was it just to have a job? So look at the main thing that made you move. Because I know a lot of people are saying they're lonely. Friendships are very important. Being part of the community is very important. But what was the main thing that made you move? People didn't move to go and make friends or meet people. That's part of the society. That's important. That's an important part of life. But what exactly made you move? So look at that. When you feel stuck, sometimes when you write these things down, then it kind of gives you a bit of motivation. Um, and if you can't make friends, if you can't talk to anyone, why can't you talk to anyone? Is it because there's no one around from your cultural background? At work, are there people at work? People need to be open-minded, without sounding too critical. I think, when you're going into a work environment, be open-minded. People have to try and make friendship. It's not easy to make friends. It's actually hard. I've moved to different countries a few times. It's not easy. You have to make an effort to make friends. You have to go out of your way to make friends and to fit into the community, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your kids as well. It's the same thing. It's hard work, and people need to know that. It's not, when you are back home, it's easy to make friends. Your neighbors, you can talk to people in the street, you can, communicate, easily with people at work. But when you're in a new environment, it's an effort, and people have to make an effort to connect to people. People have to go to events, to to gatherings, to church, to try and, meet people. People, need to be the one to initiate conversation. Some people struggle with that, but people need to know that it's actually a struggle and you have to make an effort for things to work out. I'm just looking to see if there's more questions there. So I don't know if I've answered that question.
So there are more questions. Others are coming directly to our inbox. The next question is anonymous, who said, if I take medication, won't that make me mad or dependent on them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's what I hear a lot of people say. So medication will make you feel better. Medication will not make you mad. So when you go to your GP, depending on the severity of your symptoms, they will choose an antidepressant, which will suit you. If you've never taken them before, they will start with whatever they think is more appropriate. And there are many different types of antidepressants out there. Usually they start on a very low dose. So they start low and they increase it, slowly until you reach like a therapeutic dose, like a dose that will maintain your symptoms really well. So every medication has side effects, even, ibuprofen, you get side effects from paracetamol. But when you take medication, you need to give it time to work, because I've had people say, I've had medication for 3 weeks, it's not working. 3 weeks is not enough. So when you go and get some medication, you need to have a positive mindset that this medication will help me. So if they're starting on a low dose, they'll probably increase it after 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So you need to give yourself at least 2 months on the normal dose, the high dose, what they call a therapeutic dose, before you see some improvements. So medication is not a quick fix. If they give you medication, give it the chance to work, leave it for at least 2 months on the same medication. If after 2 months, you're not seeing any improvement, you can go back to your GP. But then, like I said, with some of these symptoms that you face, you need both medication and talking to someone. Because if you take medication and you're dealing with a very pressing situation, medication is not going to change. It'll work in your brain, with chemical imbalances and all that in your brain. But the situation on the ground, if it's the same, you're not expecting to see a drastic change in your mental health or your mood or, anxiety levels. So people need to understand that sometimes when you're depressed and it's situational, you need both medication and talking to someone about it. Because if you just take medication, that situation is still there. And people will be like, oh, medication isn't helping. It's probably helping, but you need help with dealing with this situation. You need to problem solve. You need therapy. You need to talk to someone about this. And often, if you have both, you get better outcomes. So it's really important to think about that as well. So what do I do if I don't have enough hours? I want to pay rent. So a lot of people, are really stressed about this. So what I've been saying to people, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but Tulia will be able to help, in some of these situations. But what I can say is, it is really important for people to communicate with their employer. I know people are trying, people are communicating. But if it's not working where you are, if you can move, it's really important to think about moving to a different employer. I know it's not easy, but at the end of the day, you need to start looking around. It's just like when you have a job and you're not happy in a workplace, it's affecting your mental well-being. You need to start considering moving because, you need something better. So it's the same situation. In this case, you need to make plans about moving to a different employer if at all possible. If not, just continue to talk to your employer. If they have a human resources, talk to HR about these challenges you're facing. I don't know if people join unions, if you're a member of a union as well, just talk to them. Because I know a lot of people's mental health is being affected by lack of enough hours and, work conflicts. So it's important to know when it's time to move if you can. So the long hours, working without day offs. So if you're having palpitations going to work, if you're having anxiety at work and not having time off, then basically you're sick. But people don't see it that way because you're actually sick. So if you tell your employer that you're sick, I'm not sure how they can keep, they can't make you go to work when you're sick. But people struggle to tell their employer that I'm sick, or because people have sick leaves. So if you're having palpitations, if you are working 12 consecutive days, it's at some point you'll get sick. So what I always say to people is you need a day off. If you go to an employer and say, look, I'm tired, I have worked 12 consecutive days, it's different from when you go to your employer and say, look, I'm sick. I need to take a day off. I can't come to work. Or just call in and say, I'm not coming today, I'm sick. People have to realize that when you can't actually go to work, when you have exhaustion and you're having these palpitations, that's being sick. So tell your employer that I'm not coming to work. I am sick. I don't know if, anyone can be penalized for taking time out of work sick, but it's the way people say to their employer, like if you go and say, I've had 12 days nonstop, I'm tired. So if you're saying you're tired or, keep going and say, I need a day off, tell them that you're sick if this is what's going on with you. If you're having palpitations, if you're feeling depressed or sad, or if you can't get out of bed because because of exhaustion, you're actually sick. So that's what I would say. So that's the answer to that question. And people need to know that when you have symptoms like palpitations and when you're crying a lot, those are the symptoms of depression. That's more than stress. Because when you're having palpitations, you're actually having some anxiety symptoms. And you need to deal with those. You need to have some coping strategies, because if you go to work, if you're driving, if you're doing like dom care, you're putting your life at risk when you're having palpitations, you're driving. This is when you go to work and you make some errors if you're, giving medication to clients or, providing care to people. So you need to look after your mental health, because when you have these palpitations, if you don't deal with them, they will eventually turn into something bigger. I'm not trying to scare people, but I want people to know that if you don't deal with mental health symptoms, they don't get better if you just leave them. You need help. You need self-care. You need to look after yourself. You need to look after your mental well-being. So this is really important. So someone is saying depression is not a weakness. So what I mean is when you're because some people think that when they tell people that they're depressed, it means they're a weak person, they can't cope with situations. That's why back home, some people never mention that they are depressed. They just carry on with life as if, everything is fine when it's not, because they fear what people will say about them. So this is what I mean. So it doesn't mean that you're weak when you're depressed. It doesn't mean that you can't deal with situations. It doesn't mean that you're mentally crazy or anything like that. It just means that everyone has feelings. And so when you're sad, it's a normal reaction to what's going on around you. This is what causes depression. Something would have happened and you're reacting to that. So when you react to something that's happened in your life, it depends on how you react. Sometimes you react, you feel a bit sad, you feeling a bit upset, but sometimes it's more than that. Then you start thinking about this, what happened, and you think about it, even more all the time. And then it starts affecting your life, your sleep, your eating, the way you work, and you start isolating yourself. You don't want to see people. So it's like a spiral. It's a cycle that goes around. So this is what I mean. It's not a weakness, but it's a reaction. People sometimes think that if you're depressed, you're weak, like you can't deal with situations. Always think that, you've reacted to something that's happening in your life. And the important thing is to deal with whatever happened, the trigger, what made you become the way you are, what made you become sad. So that's what you need to look at. Don't know if there's any more questions. So someone is taking sertraline 50 milligrams once a day. So sertraline, so when you start medication, always go back to your GP for a review, because if you're taking sertraline 50 milligrams, I don't know how you've been taking it for, but it's still a lower dose. So you need to go back to your GP. Usually they leave 2 weeks in between, depending on your GP. So you need to go back and say, I've been taking this for so long. These are my symptoms. I'm not better. Because sertraline 50 is a low dose. There is still room for that to be increased. So always go for reviews. Take time and go to your GP for a review. And they can increase that medication, the same medication. You don't need to change. It's that just that when you're on a low dose, it won't work. You need to go back and talk to your GP, and they can increase it to a more therapeutic dose. And sleep is not good. So sleep, people, sometimes when you're too tired, you can't actually sleep. So you need to kind of wind down when you finish work, or, before you go to sleep. Do a little bit of stretching exercise. Avoid drinking coffee, caffeine, anything to do with caffeine. So this is called sleep hygiene. You need to try and avoid drinking too much water, later in the day. Do not drink coffee and other stimulants, and try and do a bit of exercise before sleep. If you can't sleep, you can even get out of bed and do a bit of stretching, and sometimes it helps. And if you're not sleeping, sometimes just break it down, like, what are you doing when you can't sleep? Are you thinking? What are you thinking about? Write down what you're thinking about. Sometimes it helps. If there are bad thoughts, like bad stuff you're thinking about, write it down and just, put it in the bin in the morning. Those thoughts, they're bad thoughts. You don't want to think about those. So it helps to write down what you're actually thinking about if you can't sleep. if there's more questions.
So there's someone who put a contribution there.
Mm-hmm. Just a contribution, reading the Bible, meditation. You can also listen to worship music. Works. Yeah, that's really good. There's worship music as well. And I think there's also on YouTube some Bible meditation for sleep. So you can, it goes on for like 12 hours, I think, a few of them. So you can just leave that on and just focus on listening to those. So that's a great idea. Thanks for your contribution. So this sertraline, which time is best? With sertraline, it doesn't really matter. You can take it in the morning or at night, whichever is best for you, because it doesn't affect your sleep or anything. So that's a question on, what time to take their medication. So we are running out of time. I just want to thank Tulia for having me on this platform. So those who want more information, we have a WhatsApp group that you can join where we discuss different topics each week. Thank you so much for having me. I'll hand you over to Tendai.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Doris. We really, really appreciate the time you've taken. I know in Australia it's probably early hours of the morning, and you've sacrificed to just wake up and be with us tonight. We really appreciate your help, and the conversation was so amazing. We learned a lot. So thank you all guys for joining us today. We will share Doris' contact details for those who might want to get in touch with her, probably one-on-one help. So I'm just going to run through what Tula is all about, what we do. So we offer legal advice and holistic support here in the UK, and these are some of the services that we offer. Legal advice on UK immigration, visa applications for skilled workers, visitors visas, dependents, and so on. We also help with appeals and administration reviews. We can also help you even to extend your stay. Even I know most people, they are facing challenges whereby their sponsor license is getting revoked. So if you're in that sort of situation, we can help you with various options that you can consider to extend your stay in the UK.